Mark chapter 6, continued. Theme, Synagogue in Nazareth, healing the sick at Nazareth. The 12 sent out, disciples heal, death of John the Baptist, the 12 return, 5,000 fed, walks on sea, sick in land of Gennesaret healed. Death of John the Baptist. And King Herod heard of him, for his name was spread abroad, and he said, that John the Baptist was risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. Others said, that it is Elias. And others said, that it is a prophet, or is one of the prophets. Mark 6:14-15. We can see that this man Herod was very superstitious. But there was a great deal of mingled reaction among the people about the Lord Jesus as to who he was. There is that same reaction today, by the way. We find that different people have different viewpoints and different explanations of the person, the presence, and the power of the Lord Jesus. So there was this confusion, and Herod was definitely afraid. But when Herod heard thereof, he said, it is John, whom I beheaded, he is risen from the dead. Mark 6:16. Herod was afraid. For Herod himself had sent forth and laid hold upon John, and bound him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife, for he had married her. For John had said unto Herod, it is not lawful for thee to have thy brother's wife. Mark 6:17-18. The murder of John had taken place previous to this point in the ministry of Jesus. Notice that John boldly denounced sin in high places. He had denounced Herod for taking Herodias, his brother's wife. This enraged her and caused her to plot John's death. Therefore Herodias had a quarrel against him, and would have killed him, but she could not, for Herod feared John, knowing that he was a just man and an holy, and observed him, and when he heard him, he did many things, and heard him gladly. Mark 6:19-20. Did Herodias keep Herod from turning to God? And when a convenient day was come, that Herod on his birthday made a supper to his lords, high captains, and chief estates of Galilee, and when the daughter of the said Herodias came in, and danced, and pleased Herod and them that sat with him, the king said unto the damsel, ask of me whatsoever thou wilt, and I will give it thee. Mark 6:21-22. Herodias had asked her daughter to dance before him because she knew what a lecherous, lustful old man he was. He gave the daughter a blank check and she could ask anything she wanted. And he sware unto her, whatsoever thou shalt ask of me, I will give it thee, unto the half of my kingdom. And she went forth, and said unto her mother, what shall I ask? And she said, the head of John the Baptist. Mark 6:23-24. The mother was prepared for this. The brutality of this woman boggles the mind. And she came in straightway with haste unto the king, and asked, saying, I will that thou give me by and by in a charger the head of John the Baptist. And the king was exceeding sorry, yet for his oath's sake, and for their sakes which sat with him, he would not reject her. Mark 6:25-26. Another weakness of Herod is revealed here. He was afraid of what his friends might think and say. He had a false sense of values about an oath. And immediately the king sent an executioner, and commanded his head to be brought, and he went and beheaded him in the prison, and brought his head in a charger, and gave it to the damsel, and the damsel gave it to her mother. Mark 6:27-28. This was cold-blooded murder. And when his disciples heard of it, they came and took up his corpse, and laid it in a tomb. Mark 6:29. The disciples of John took up the decapitated body of John and tenderly buried it. The 12 return. Mark now returns the narrative to the ministry of Jesus. The apostles make their first report. Note the absence of details. And the apostles gathered themselves together unto Jesus, and told him all things, both what they had done, and what they had taught. And he said unto them, come ye yourselves apart into a desert place, and rest a while, for there were many coming and going, and they had no leisure so much as to eat. Mark 6:30-31. It is impossible for us to understand how really busy the Lord Jesus was and how great the demands were upon him. He had to withdraw to an uninhabited place in an attempt to rest and let his apostles rest. 5,000 fed. And they departed into a desert place by ship privately. And the people saw them departing, and many knew him, and ran afoot thither out of all cities, and outwent them, and came together unto him. And Jesus, when he came out, saw much people, and was moved with compassion toward them, because they were as sheep not having a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. Mark 6:32-34. It was futile to try to find a place to be alone. The crowd followed around the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and they were there to meet Jesus and the disciples when they landed. The reaction of Jesus was one of complete sympathy. All people are sheep to him. He alone is the true shepherd. This is the reason he fed them. He first met their spiritual needs by teaching them. Then he met their physical needs by feeding them. And when the day was now far spent, his disciples came unto him, and said, This is a desert place, and now the time is far past. Send them away, that they may go into the country round about, and into the villages, and buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat. He answered and said unto them, Give ye them to eat. And they say unto him, Shall we go and buy 200 pennyworth of bread, and give them to eat? Mark 6:35-37. He commands them to do an impossible task. They must learn, as we must learn, that he always commands the impossible. The reason is obvious. He intends to do the work. He saith unto them, How many loaves have ye? Go and see. And when they knew, they say, 5, and 2 fishes. And he commanded them to make all sit down by companies upon the green grass. And they sat down in ranks, by hundreds, and by 50s. And when he had taken the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, he looked up to heaven, and blessed, and brake the loaves, and gave them to his disciples to set before them. And the 2 fishes divided he among them all. And they did all eat, and were filled. And they took up 12 baskets full of the fragments, and of the fishes. And they that did eat of the loaves were about 5,000 men. Mark 6:38-44. This is a miracle. The Creator who made the fish at the beginning and caused the grain to multiply in the field, now by his fiat word creates food for the crowd. This may have been the first time many in this crowd ever were filled. Walks on sea. And straightway he constrained his disciples to get into the ship, and to go to the other side before unto Bethsaida, while he sent away the people. Mark 6:45. There is an urgency expressed in the 2 words straightway and constrained. The explanation is found in John 6:15. Jesus perceived that they would try by force to make him a king. And when he had sent them away, he departed into a mountain to pray. And when even was come, the ship was in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land. And he saw them toiling and rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them. And about the 4th watch of the night he cometh unto them, walking upon the sea, and would have passed by them. But when they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit, and cried out, for they all saw him, and were troubled. And immediately he talked with them, and saith unto them, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And he went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased, and they were sore amazed in themselves beyond measure, and wondered. For they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened. Mark 6:46-52. Note that here we find no record of Simon Peter coming to him walking on the water. After all, Mark got his information on the human plane from Simon Peter, and Peter just left out his part of the story. It is Matthew who gives us that detail. I do want to call your attention to verse 48 where it says, And he saw them toiling and rowing. Those men were in the boat that night and they were mingling their sweat with the waves whose salt water was breaking over their little boat. They were straining at the oars and they actually thought they were going down. But he saw them toiling and rowing. I love that. I don't know where you are today or what position you are in. You may be in a hard spot right now. You may be sitting alone in a corner of darkness. You may be facing temptations and problems that are too great to bear. You may find yourself out on a stormy sea and you feel as if your little boat is going down. I have some good news for you, Christian friend. He saw them toiling and rowing. He sees you. He knows your problems. You don't have to send up a flare to let him know. He already knows. Oh, that today you might commit your way to him in a very definite way. That is something that so many of us need to do in times of darkness, just commit our way unto him. He saw them toiling and rowing. Only Mark, by the way, gives us a record of that. Then we find that he came to them and he entered into the ship with them. And Mark says that they were amazed in themselves beyond measure. In the conclusion of this chapter we find that he went over to the land of Gennesaret. Sick in land of Gennesaret healed. And when they had passed over, they came into the land of Gennesaret, and drew to the shore. And when they were come out of the ship, straightway they knew him, and ran through that whole region round about, and began to carry about in beds those that were sick, where they heard he was. And whithersoever he entered, into villages, or cities, or country, they laid the sick in the streets, and besought him that they might touch if it were but the border of his garment. And as many as touched him were made whole. Mark 6:53-56. You and I today can't even envisage the number of sick people that he had healed. I understand there is one denomination that has offered $1,000 to anybody who will come forward and show that he has been healed by a faith healer. I understand the $1,000 has never been taken. It's amazing, Isn't it, when you hear all this propaganda today that is going around? In Jesus' day, one could have brought together thousands of people that he had healed. My friend, he was genuine. It was real. That is the reason the enemy never denied that he performed miracles.